let's face it, most of what we come across, that Green River man is doing much anyway.
There was no denying that Ted Bundy had knowledge and a point of view that no one else did.
But there may be something creative that we can do to attack this problem.
If I were in your shoes, I would try not to put too much weight on the profile and all the psychological bullshit.
Now was the time to play to his fragile ego and make him feel respected.
The experts, they can tell you a bunch of about him and what his background might be like, but they can tell you absolutely nothing about you how to catch him.
Exactly.
But the FBI is really serious about profiling. What should they be looking for?
Could the great Ted Bundy actually have valuable insights into the Riverman?
Well, that's a good question. It comes down to what is he doing here right now? What is the Green River Man doing right now? What is it? What's he thinking? That's what's important.
This is a tape-recorded interview between Bob Keppel and Ted Bundy.
We have almost 24 young women dead, the victims of the Green River Killer.
The whole premise was using one killer to catch another killer. It had never been done before, and that became the Silence of the Lambs.
Do you think there's something that we can do to draw him out of the woodwork?
Yes, I have an idea or two that might help you catch him. There are an infinite number of ways to explain how a man can come to the point where he destroys human life.
The girl's head was severed and taken up the road.
Less than 6 hours from now, accused mass murderer Ted Bundy is scheduled to be executed in a Florida prison.
I'm the only one in possession of this information. That's just the way it is. It's now or never.
Strange as it was, Ted Bundy and I were hunting for the Green River Killer, who targeted prostitutes and earned his nickname by dumping his first 5 victims in the Green River near Seattle. As of November 1984, 42 women had either been found dead or were missing and presumed dead, all of them allegedly Green River Killer victims. The discovery of each new body felt like a gut punch, and the latest victim, Martina Otherly, had been found only 3 days earlier. We finally caught a break when Melvin Foster showed up on our radar.
Yeah, Foster. This is the name of the man that is the taxi driver, the friend of the ladies of the streets, right?
Mm-hmm.
He obviously has an interest in this kind of thing. It may be some kind of perverse interest. He may wish he had killed some of them.
For nearly a month now, undercover officers have been stationed in this area, keeping a 24-hour watch on Melvin Foster, who lives just up the road from here.
We began to work on the tips that were coming in. And one day, a call comes in, and it was Melvin Foster. And Melvin said that he could help us. And he said, well, I have some experience in these things. He says, yes, I work as a cab driver. I know the streets. I know all the people out there. And then we asked him about the first victims that were found. and he denied knowing any of them. But later, as we start talking, he knows Marcia Chapman, he knows Cynthia Hines, he knows Opal Mills, he knows Deborah Bonner, he knows Wendy Caulfield.
Foster became a suspect because he drove his taxi up and down Pacific Highway South, which had an active prostitution strip. He also looked promising because he had served time in prison for auto theft. The media was eager for a suspect to serve up on the evening news, and Foster was happy to oblige.
Did you kill all those women or what?
No, but I wish I did. I wish I did know who did.
Foster failed a polygraph, and he had no alibi for any of the murders. Bundy had thoughts about Foster, of course.
What do you think about the polygraph?
I don't see how I could flunk it and not know something. He took the polygraph and, I don't know, hairs and fibers would be the next step.
Bundy had learned a lot about police procedures. He suspected we'd searched Foster's home and vehicles for hairs and fibers, the kind of physical evidence missing from our TED investigation.
Nearly 60 police officers launched a massive search of Melvin Foster's home. King County Police took several pieces of women's clothing from Foster's house, items which Foster says belonged to his deceased mother.
The search didn't turn up anything conclusive.
It almost seemed like with Melvin Foster that he wanted to make himself a suspect, that he kind of craved the attention, that it was exciting.
I felt the last thing the Green River Killer would want was any public attention, and here was Foster giving one interview after another.
They couldn't have found their butt with both hands. Instead, they chose to squander in excess of $250,000 looking at the wrong guy, while girls 60 miles away are being snatched up and losing their lives.
I can see how somebody like Foster would drive you nuts. Because what if you're wrong? I mean, what if he is doing it and he's sitting there, you know, in front of God and everybody?
Foster's behavior was odd, but there was no hard evidence linking him to the murder, so we ruled him out.
The real guy knows they don't jack because they were putting that kind of pressure on this guy. And so I just sit back and say, oh, I'm over it. And they don't have to think.
We were no closer to finding the Green River Killer.
One of the biggest struggles in this case was the doubt that the media actually created in the minds of the public about whether or not we even cared.
The scene has become sickeningly familiar in the last 2 years. The U.S. Prostitutes Collective, as well as other women's organizations, have criticized police, saying that because most of the victims were associated with prostitution, no one has been taking the death seriously.
We had a very contentious relationship with the press. I understand that the media has a job to do, but unfortunately, they got in the way on more than one occasion.
Reporters descended on Seattle, searching for Green River Killer news. The news stations were so determined to get the story first, they blew our cover on the first and most important Green River surveillance.
And we're trying to do a surveillance, and the word got out, and so then we have the media overhead in a helicopter. So we did fight with information being leaked and stymieing what we had wanted to do.
When the news goes public with something like that, you're not just telling the public what's happening. You know who else you're telling what's happening? The serial killer.
In terms of publicity, the more the perpetrator knows about what the police know, the more he knows how to proceed in the future. And that will cause him to modify his modus operandi in such a way it's going to be harder to find.
I believed our first Green River surveillance could have identified the killer, if not for the media's interference. We were at a dead end. I had nothing to lose by asking Bundy about the Green River murders, and maybe he'd reveal something about his own cases. I asked him how he thought the Riverman was getting rid of physical evidence.
So I'd ask you about property. We talked about the clothing and jewelry, things like that.
Not leaving any clothing on the victims, I take it. We want to leave a minimum amount of evidence at the scene.
By now, Ted knew we were asking questions about the Riverman's methods of operation that resembled his own. Bundy was known for leaving his victims naked.
If my sense of it is right, he's going for the quick disposal. He doesn't want to have much around at all. He doesn't want to have the body in his car very well.
Well, somewhere between here and the inquest sites, you find those victims' ID along with Highway 18 here.
That's
what would have caused him to throw that out the window, or have you been struggling with her along with I think he just disposed of it after he dumped her?
My guess is you found her ID there because he threw it out the window, not because they were struggling. He might be just jettisoning these belongings out the window as he drives along. That's not a particularly a bad way of getting rid of such things, because there's trash along the highway all the time and it's just collected.
Bundy was shedding light onto what he did with his victims, while also giving us a lead about the Riverman. Since Ted was opening up, it was time to see if he could really help us.
Do you think there's something that we can do to draw him out of the woodwork?
Yes. I think there are a couple of things. May sound a little bit strange. But I'll offer them to you for what they're worth.
Bundy said he had some strange ideas about catching the Green River Killer. I got my poker face ready for what Ted Bundy considered strange.
I think he's into, pornography. I think he's into violence. I think he's into violent media. Like say, in the pornographic bookshops and some of the more violent flips. But what I know with all my heart is a terrifically potent force that aggravates tendencies for violent behavior of the kind that we see in serial murders. And that influences, pornography. We're all affected by our environments.
Ted turned to stare at me with a look in his eyes that said, "Are you believing this?"
When you listen to his explanation of serial sexual murder, he relies heavily on blaming pornography for it. He was a victim of pornography. He was a normal person until society corrupted him. None of that is true, but that's what Bundy wants people to believe. Keep in mind, Bundy is a pathological liar.
Bundy would call his next idea strange. I considered it the most preposterous idea I'd ever heard.
In my opinion, it's safe to say the guy who's killing his woman, it's like a hobby to him, or maybe an obsession. He has ways he can vicariously satisfy them. And I think there's an excellent chance that one way he gets off is by going to what they call a slash. If I was trying to narrow it down and bring this guy to me, I'd find bloodiest, coolest slasher movie that's out there in the can that deals with a violent murderer of young women.
Serial sexual murder is a fusion of sex and aggression so that the aggressive act itself is eroticized. It's looking at a woman in a subservient position tied up with violence around her. And that attracts them like a magnet.
And I would pick two theaters, one in the Seattle, one Tacoma area, outside of the general vicinity where they drove with them secure. And then I would photograph everybody who came in and out of those theaters for developing possible suspects. And, have a slasher film festival. And, that might be a little bit too much to ask. Or
Dave was so astonished by what Ted was proposing, he accidentally knocked the tape recorder off the table.
We're still alive.
What I didn't tell him was that his idea was illegal. If we caught the Riverman this way, we couldn't show probable cause based on the killer's attendance at a slasher film festival. It was time for a new tactic. I knew a well-placed yawn might have him trying harder to please. Did he have insights as good as the one about what the Riverman did with his victim's clothing?
Am I boring you?
They wanted Bundy to think, you're not that important to us. But, we'll give you some latitude and see, if you have something that would be helpful.
In my opinion, the best chance you have of catching this guy red-handed is to get a site with a fresh body and stick it out. I put that site under surveillance. I wouldn't move in.
All it took was a yawn, and I had Ted back on track. He was offering a plausible strategy and getting closer to details of his own murders.
Secure the area and try to keep everything off your radio. And now you might want to remove the body under cover of darkness. Because if your man comes back to that site, by the time he gets on top of that body, you've already got his number.
He was certain the Green River Killer would return to his dump sites because that's exactly what he had done, over and over again.
Bundy had placed several remains in Issaquah, Ward 3 and then 4 near Taylor Mountain, which suggested these sites meant something to him. And they were hoping when he talked about the Riverman's dump sites, he would be revealing why his own dump sites were important.
And I know the instinct of the police is to move in and scour the site. And this always fascinated me and appalled me because I said, they only waited. The guy would have come right up to him. No question in my mind, but if you stayed at that site, you would snare this guy. There's no doubt.
If we could go back in time, what would we have seen if we had staked out Ted's dump site at Taylor Mountain?
When the Taylor Mountain site was discovered, it was Linda Healy, Susan Rancourt, Brenda Ball, and Kathleen Parks. The fact that they were all there on the same site meant that the killer was returning with remains from different killings and going back to the same site.
At Taylor Mountain, they were just skulls. There was no fatal injury marks on any of the skulls. We didn't have any long bones to go along with them, and that was a mystery for quite a while.
Bundy and the Green River Killer shared a common fascination with their victims' corpses.
Say you had a lot of bodies where you were going to tell that anything was alive. And it's meant to be there such that look like left for you.
May have not left it for you, but left it for himself. For him, the corpse could easily be as important as the live victim.
Even though Ted never said it directly, by suggesting the crime scene surveillance, I think he believed the riverman was a necrophiliac. I wanted to see if he would say the word out loud.
I don't know what condition the bodies were in or anything, or, if we have any evidence that they were sexually assaulted.
I was just thinking about post-mortem activities.
Whether he gets off by going back to the sites and molesting the corpses or whatever. It may be a fetish, it may be necrophilia.
Necrophilia. You're sexually aroused when you go back and you have sex with a corpse.
There's a certain aspect of possessiveness where the corpse could easily be as important as the live victim. I mean, it's the physical possession and ownership that is part of the syndrome.
Bundy was talking in the third person. That was just obvious to us. And so therefore knew that those things that he was talking about the riverman doing, that he had most likely done himself.
I knew from post-mortem reports that Ted was also a necrophiliac. And now he knew we knew that.
When it comes to necrophilia, oftentimes it's really more about control and power and humiliation and punishment. They enjoy being able to engage in those behaviors without anybody being able to stop them.
Bundy killed to get a sex partner. The killing wasn't the highest point of his life. The sexual activity after death was the highest point of his life.
I knew Bundy was evil. I just didn't know how evil.
Notwithstanding what anybody says, I'm sure there's got to be a sense of remorse. It may not be really strong, but all of this is expected over time.
The only thing Ted felt bad about was getting caught. But he'd shut down if I challenged him. I was also sure that the riverman felt no remorse, based on how he had desecrated his victims' bodies.
The Green River Killer placed rocks inside the vaginas of some of his victims, particularly the early victims that were found in the Green River.
Many of the victims seemed to be posed, legs spread apart, arms spread out.
His posing was about getting them into a position where he could more easily have sex with their dead bodies. Because you can imagine the difficulty once somebody is died and rigor mortis sets in.
Ted continued his defense of serial killers with an insight about the Green River Killer that eventually proved correct.
Don't overlook the fact that in many respects he is in fact as normal as anybody else. He may not be. But this guy has lasted long enough that he's not a raving maniac.
Ted considered himself the world's best serial killer profiler. So we played into his grandiosity and asked Ted to build a profile of the Green River Killer.
He's young. He probably has a little paying job that restricts his movement. He doesn't have a lot of money. He can't move around.
What race?
White.
Get Wolverine?
Possibly, but when he's as active as he has been somewhere in here, he's certainly going to put a strain on any relationship he's trying to maintain.
You expect that that girl might like able to protect the strain of one and the father?
It's possible he's been hiding it all his life. He's just become part of his nature to conceal what he can from the people around him. As much of that as you can.
Was he talking about the Green River Killer or himself? It seemed the answer was both when I recalled the interviews we'd had with Ted's girlfriend, Liz Klepfer.
Testing 1, 2, 3. This will be an interview with Elizabeth Klepfer.
Hundreds of people called in about somebody they worked with, their cousin, their boyfriend, and one of them, of course, was Liz Klepfer, who called in about Ted Bundy. Having seen the composite sketch, several people said, "That looks like Ted, doesn't it?"
Would you describe a telephone call that you received from Ted Bundy?
He told me that he wished that we could sit down and talk about why he was the way he is. He told me that he was sick and that he was consumed by something that he didn't understand and that he just couldn't contain it.
In 1974, Ted Bundy's girlfriend, Liz Klepfer, had contacted King County detectives to report her suspicions about Bundy. We brought Liz in for an interview. She told us she and Ted met at a bar in 1969.
She told us a lot of very positive things about him, that he was good with her daughter, he went to school and studied hard, had ambitions, but also he had a dark side. He could be very strange and withdrawn.
She said she'd noticed several similarities between the suspect killer's profile and Ted. He, too, had a tan VW Beetle. And she remembered that on July 14th, the day of the Lake Sammamish disappearances, he had returned to her house in an angry mood.
Well, he said that he tried to maintain a normal life and he just couldn't do it. That he couldn't seem to get his act together.
Did he mention why he couldn't contain it?
He said that for years before he even met me, he'd been fighting the same sickness. He said that he felt like he had a disease like alcoholism. He said that he was preoccupied with his force.
Bundy didn't have a dark entity that was causing him to do the things that he did. He was who he was, and he was someone who liked to kill.
Liz Klepfer spoke about the things that she saw in his room. He had plaster of Paris. He had women's clothing.
He had burglary tools, masks, ropes, handcuffs, stuff that just made her very suspicious.
Ted's girlfriend, Liz, gave us 3 pictures of Ted to show to the Lake Sammamish witnesses. But none of them could pick him out of a photo lineup. So the investigators put Bundy back into the pile of Ted's suspects.
But suddenly the killings in Seattle stopped. What we now know, of course, that Bundy had moved on to Utah.
In 1974, Ted Bundy had enrolled at the University of Utah Law School in Salt Lake City, where he had an active social life.
Through his charm and everything else, he joined the Mormon church. He was a great cook. He'd have parties. I mean, he just was a nice guy to be around. I liked him.
He fits into a community in that way. For him, what he really wanted too is to deceive those people. That's all. He enjoys deceiving people like that too.
When the task force found out Ted Bundy had moved to Salt Lake City, we gave the sheriff's office there a call to report his now ex-girlfriend Liz's suspicions about Ted. Then we moved on.
The last time I spent with him on a summer vacation was in Utah. I would have been 15. 14. He sent me home early, and I was really upset about that. He wouldn't tell me why he was sending me home early. He just said, I just got a bunch of important stuff I have to do. I said, Ted, what the hell? What's the deal? So I didn't want to push it. I figured he's not going to tell me or whatever. He just wants me to go home. So at the airport, as we're waiting for the plane, he had this look like he was going to throw up. He was just looking like he was looking at something really troubling and disgusting. I think that he felt it coming on. He wanted to go rape and murder somebody, and he didn't want me there when he did it. He obviously had that two sides of a coin kind of thing, where you couldn't see the other side of the coin. Some things you stick in your head forever, and I'll never forget. That was the last time I visited with him.
Nearly a year after Ted Bundy moved to Utah, we received some shocking information. When I got to the office that day, I felt a change in the air. The drudgery of the daily routine was gone. It had been replaced with a buzz of excitement.
When a detective called me from Salt Lake City and said, we have someone here that's been arrested and his name is Ted Bundy, it was a moment that I won't forget.
Ted Bundy was arrested in Salt Lake City and charged with possession of burglary tools and evading an officer.
While we had leads on some other suspects, we never had enough to charge anyone. But now we did, and his name was Ted Bundy.
When he was arrested that night, he was cruising through a neighborhood late at night.
The trooper found a large ice pick, pieces of rope, a pry bar, a full-face ski mask, and a pair of handcuffs.
When we found Bundy was in Utah, the Utah Sheriff's Office had a fresh case named Carol DeRange.
Carol DeRange had narrowly escaped from an attempted kidnapping at a Utah mall. And for 9 months, police had been hunting for her attacker.
On the evening of November the 8th, 1974, Carol DeRange parked her car in this parking lot at the Fashion Mall. Shortly after began what she now calls her personal nightmare.
Bundy said, excuse me, someone is trying to break into your car out in the parking lot. Do you have a such and such car? She was reluctant at first. She asked to see a badge. He flashed something at her, which was a fake badge, of course. He gets her into the car and gets out a crowbar and handcuffs and tries to simultaneously hit her. He gets one hand in one of the handcuffs, but she fights him off. She tumbles out of the car, weeping and crying. We know all of this because she lived to tell the tale.
When Carol DeRange got away, she set in motion a chain of events that led to Ted Bundy sitting before me in Florida State Prison. He was embarrassed by this failure and quick to point out the Green River Killer was making the same type of mistakes.
He's not getting everybody he approaches. If something doesn't feel right, once he even starts talking to her, she doesn't want to go. If he's using the police badge routine, it commands a lot of power. And that's going to stick out in her mind, at least initially, until the cover is blown.
Surprisingly, numerous serial killers have been brought down by an unlikely source, a living witness, the one who got away. And now Carol DeRange was about to help put Bundy away.
Utah was able to get together the case on Bundy, put him in a lineup.
On October 3rd, after Carol DaRonch identified Bundy, he was arrested for aggravated kidnapping and attempted murder. That's when the story hit the newspapers.
I remember it quite vividly. My mom's on the phone talking to the police or him, and I could tell something very serious was going on. She said, "Your brother's been arrested. He's in jail on suspicion of kidnapping." But I thought, oh, shoot, this is really, really serious. So, here I am, a kid of 14 and a half, and dealing with his hero being accused of being the total opposite. But I still was not fully comprehending that he was a scumbag, murdering piece of...
While Bundy was in jail awaiting his trial for the attempted kidnapping of Carol DaRonch, investigators in other states started to connect him to unsolved murders of women in their jurisdictions. The cases against Bundy were stacking up.
Capo realized, good grief, this is the same victim profile. These are the same types of victims. This is the same killer. It was Bundy.
As murder cases against Bundy were building in several different states, he stood trial for the Carol DaRonch kidnapping charges in Utah.
On March 1st, 1976, 3rd District Judge Stuart Hansen Jr. found Bundy guilty of second-degree kidnapping. He was given a 1 to 15-year sentence at the Utah State Prison.
I don't think it turned out the way Dad would have wanted. He would have wanted to bring Bundy in himself, but they didn't have the evidence at the time.
Back in Washington, we were collecting mountains of circumstantial evidence. But we still lacked hard evidence, like hair and fibers, needed to actually charge Bundy here.
We knew we just had to keep searching, so we could bring it to a jury in Washington State and get a conviction.
Knowing you have a suspect is one thing. Proving that person is guilty is another.
One of the things I packed around for years was guilt over not being able to get him charged in our jurisdiction. I was holding inside self-condemnation and guilt for not being able to make Bundy's case here because that was my job. And I came up short in my job. My job was to solve cases. I resigned as a homicide detective because I thought that I had failed myself and failed the victims' families for not being able to get Bundy charged. So that was something I packed around for a while.
If it can be said that serial killers make victims of entire communities, then in our own way, Roger and I became two of Ted Bundy's victims. And he was far from done with us. Colorado became the first state to charge Bundy with murder for a case involving a nurse who vanished from a ski resort in Aspen.
While serving time in the Utah State Prison, Bundy was charged with murdering a nurse near Aspen, Colorado.
After his arrest, police searched Bundy's VW and found a hair. It was from Karen Campbell's head. That hair was the physical evidence investigators needed to charge Bundy with murder in Colorado.
Bundy was in custody in Utah until he was extradited to Colorado.
Bundy was brought into court early this morning.
Bundy relished the spotlight as he was being extradited to Colorado. It made my skin crawl to see the little zit holding court. I wondered whether I would ever get the chance to burst Ted's bubble. I hoped so, if all went according to plan.
I don't like being locked up for something I didn't do, and I don't like my liberty taken away, and I don't like being treated like an animal, and I don't like people walking around and ogling me like I'm some sort of weirdo, because I'm not.
You think about getting out of here?
Well, legally, sure.
The courthouse in Aspen. Bundy was supposedly working on his defense, the law library, to defend himself in the Karen Campbell killing. While he was there, he struck up a camaraderie with his jailers and gained the trust of these guys, who eventually let him wander farther and farther away.
He had gone to a small law library in the back of the courtroom, out of sight of his guard. It was then that he jumped out of a second-story window.
A woman happened to be coming into the courthouse, and she asked the clerk at the front, "Is it normal for someone to jump out the second-story window of the courthouse?"
Convicted Utah kidnapper Theodore Bundy has escaped from an Aspen, Colorado courtroom and remains at this hour the subject of a manhunt.
I remember they were showing Green River Task Force picking up bones, not knowing that that was our sister Tammy.
Bundy's escape bordered on a Houdini escapade.
The fact that he escaped a second time remains a criminal moral failing on the part of the authorities.
He's driving across the whole country to Florida. What's in Florida? Just like University of Washington, sorority houses.
Ted Bundy never left a victim alive. And I knew he was going to kill me.
Accused killer Theodore Bundy was captured early this morning.
Theodore Bundy could be the King County Ted.
At that point, there were only 6 days left before he was going to die.
You can look at me as a hypocrite that I've waited so long, but the fact is, better late than never.